that's the big takeaway here for the leaders, the credit union leaders that listen into this. We can do it. And it goes back to, what do you prioritize? What's the most important to you? What are you passionate about? And that's what I love about Dana's leadership and the credit union's leadership. And I'll restate, it's going to be fun to watch the success of Princeton Federal Credit Union, and we will be sharing it with as many credit unions as we know. We want people to replicate what you're doing. So, and Tom, thank you so much for bringing leaders in that can inspire and also inspire and educate. Um, the many credit union leaders that are out there.
Well, Scott, we're going to keep giving it the college try over here. Pun very much intended.
But it is Princeton. So that goes a long way.
Okay, I am really excited to introduce Dana Caragine, President and CEO of Princeton Federal Credit Union, to the Credit Union Nation podcast. Dana, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So let me do a quick introduction. I pulled this off of your website here. So you joined the credit union in April 2024 as Senior Director of Lending and Marketing, and your focus was growth and member engagement. You have more than 2 decades of experience in banking, wealth and asset management, investment advisory services, private lending, financial strategy, and digital innovation. And you've held positions at JP Morgan, Private Bank, Invesco, and privately held lending firms, where your work centered on the intersection of technology, marketing, and client experience. Maybe even more important than all of that stuff, you have really high praise from one Scott Butterfield, who is the founder and principal of Your Credit Union Partner, the consultancy that I work for. And
Yes.
he said that you're essentially a must interview for this podcast.
Aw,
Both you and Princeton stories
okay.
are really fantastic, he said. And one thing he said to me is that you've taken, or the credit union has taken, a very intentional journey of serving low income and historically underserved communities in Trenton. It's a remarkable pivot. So that's really high praise from Scott Butterfield.
Oh,
And
wow.
so anyway, I know that you're kind of new to the credit union movement, right?
Uh-huh.
You've held a lot of roles in different financial services sort of businesses and industries. So tell me a little bit about credit unions. How's your experience with credit unions over these first, 2 years or so?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm still recovering from the fact that you can call other credit unions and they want to be helpful. That is not a banking narrative. I think other recovering bankers who are listening to this might instantly relate to that. But I have found this to be a very warm, welcoming, mission-driven, humbling journey.
Mm,
And in some ways, for me, it is a return home because I came from the SEG. When
mm,
I was 18 years old, I was a middle class girl from New Jersey, single mother, teacher, siblings, and college was going to be financially very difficult in the cards for me.
mm,
But I was a giant nerd. You'll hear more about that, I'm sure. And I applied to Princeton, which at the time was need blind, and I got in, and they gave me a financial aid package that made it possible for me to go. They
mm,
actually made it cheaper for me to go to Princeton than to go to community college.
mm. Wow.
Okay, so the gift of a lifetime. It's like Willy Wonka. I had
Yeah,
the
yeah.
golden ticket and I knew it. I knew it at 18 years old.
Mhm,
So I spent
mhm,
4 years at Princeton. Amazing journey. Came out with an engineering degree, went right into banking, and got to a point 20 years later where I had the luxury of being able to say, how would I like the rest of my legacy to look?
mm, mm,
And to return to the Princeton community in a way that's as generous of spirit as this credit union is and as the whole movement is something that I never imagined was even a possibility.
mhm,
And I'm still a little dazzled by the
mm,
fact that all of this has unfolded.
mm.
Yeah, but I'm initially a product of the SEG. And 25 years later, here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I think every time I talk to somebody who's new into the credit union industry, the first thing that they say is that they are so blown away by how collaborative it is.
Could not agree more.
Yeah, that credit unions are willing to just share their business secrets and their strategies for how they grow, right? I mean, and I think part of that is that we aren't the most competitive industry because of field of membership. But
Hmm.
even across credit unions that do have overlapping fields of membership, you
Hmm.
still have folks, CEOs that are willing to share what they're doing to be successful. And I do think that is, very uniquely credit unions and very uniquely sort of the cooperative business model. Um,
Beautifully
so,
put.
so anything else that you can think of, as far as being really different between credit unions and some of these other industries where you've experienced?
Sure. One of the things that's really struck me here, I have a history of mainly being involved with national banks, in some cases kind of regional, but still multi-state. I'm struck at how different the credit union experience is, not only
Mm,
as a executive at one, but certainly as a member of one, certainly in terms of awareness of one in New Jersey relative to say Wisconsin or
mm,
relative to say Washington or Oregon, or
mhm,
even say to Texas. What we find here in branding is that oftentimes the initial conversations we're having are about what is a credit union. And once people understand what a credit union is, they sort of expect that Princeton's the kind of place that would have one.
mm, mhm, mhm.
So you get some biased results if you do any kind of brand scoring, because if you say, have you heard of Princeton Federal Credit Union? They go, if they know what a credit union is, they go, oh, yeah, of course.
Mhm.
So we face some different challenges here in terms of building our awareness, making people familiar with the value prop and the model of a credit union, than gets faced nationally. And that's kind of my first experience in waters as local as these.
Mm,
That's been
mhm,
another takeaway. And the third has been the incredible power of associations.
mm, mm.
So just last week, I was at NLCUP, National Association of Latino Credit Union Professionals. Huge call out to them, terrific org.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly inclusive as well. We just for this year joined Filene. We've been able to make a lot of outreach and inroads to associations that really mirror our membership. We have an
Mm,
incredibly diverse membership here, which I'd love to talk to you about more moving forward. But all of
yeah.
those things have really struck me, all very positively.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk in detail about, the strategy of the credit union to serve more of a multicultural consumer,
Mhm.
and to reach out to those communities that are currently being underserved. I did want to talk a little bit about your journey to becoming the CEO, right? So
Sure.
you've been
Yeah.
with the credit union for about 20 months, I think you mentioned,
Mhm.
and you were named CEO in December of last year. So just 4 months ago here. Is that about
Yes,
right?
that's right.
So the reason I want to ask that is because that is something that a lot of credit unions, especially smaller credit unions, deal with is this question of succession and finding that next leader of the organization.
Mhm.
And so I think it's always great to call out success stories and to kind of hear how other credit unions have gone about that process. So would love to hear from you how that process went
Mhm.
and, what you think some of the sort of positive things the board did, as far as like doing that search were. What were some of those success stories?
Sure. So when I joined to report to a real lion of a gentleman, Sam Policelli, who had a 21-year run as CEO here at Princeton FCU.
Mm, mhm,
And he had the backing and the support of a very established human resources executive, 17 years at the CU. And so when I joined, I was really reporting to Sam, working very closely, certainly with Joanne, and
mhm,
learning about how I thought we could grow this credit union. And Sam gave me incredible latitude in doing that with board support, with a strategic plan, with the help of Scott. We'd had a strategic plan in place here for several iterations. We'd had several 2, 3 year strategic plans. And so I had the benefit of seeing the arc that the credit union had evolved toward in terms of growth, the openness of the
mm,
board to
mhm,
doing things like making inroads in historically underserved populations. And I just felt like I was able to get here and hit the gas. Um,
mm,
Part of that gas had been that we really hadn't done much fundamental foundational marketing. And so
mm,
once you turn those engines on and once they start running, you start to see really compounded effects on growth. And so over that 20-month period, or it's 22 now, I can't believe how this year is flying.
mhm,
We saw double digit share growth, and we also saw double digit loan growth. And
mm,
so it's been a really commanding 2-year run for us. Won't be forever. Certainly, we're as open to seeing the impact of market forces as any credit union in the country is right now.
sure.
But we clearly think that we have proven out that the message that we're delivering to the community about who we are, who we help, and why we are relevant for you is working and is
Mm,
powerful.
mm, mm. Yeah, I want to kind of pause on that marketing
Mm-hmm.
side. So, this is something that a lot of credit unions struggle with, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
is making that investment, spending their capital, spending money to make money in a way.
Uh-huh.
And I think that, sometimes credit unions, and this was definitely the case when I first started in sort of the small credit union space 10 years ago, is
Mm-hmm.
this reluctance to spend money on marketing. Everyone would tell you that their best marketing was word of mouth. And that was sort of the best way to get the name out. And I think that's still true to a large extent for a lot of small credit unions,
Mm-hmm.
even CDFI credit unions and those that
Mm-hmm.
focus on underserved communities. If you make an impact on someone's life, if you give someone a shot at a loan when they've been turned down by five other financial institutions, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
go tell their friends and their family about the impact that you made on their lives. And so I do think that word of mouth is really a key part of growing the brand and the reputation of the credit union. But it can't be the only way,
Mm-hmm.
and should only, in my opinion, be a part of the overall sort of awareness strategy
Oh
for
yeah.
the organization, right? And so when you think about some of the traditional or fundamental marketing tactics that the credit union executed over the past, 21 months, what were some of the things that you felt had the greatest impact or that led to the most growth for the credit union?
All right. So it's a really rich question, and there's this old marketing uh, kind of a what would I call proverb, I suppose, around,
Hmm.
50% of your marketing is not working. We just don't know what 50%, right? And so
Right.
there's been this,
Yeah.
and if you don't grow up in marketing, so to speak, sometimes you have a tendency to assume that it's, throwing on the wall and seeing what sticks. And it's shiny, high profile items like naming sports stadiums and things like that. And certainly in the mega banking world, that is it. But in credit unions, you can get a lot done by empowering people, even very junior people, to pilot ideas inexpensively
Mm,
and seeing what happens.
mm,
And
mhm,
so we had a lot of success with that. And so right out the gate, we optimized our website. We launched a new web. So I joined in April of 2024. We launched a brand new website with Omni Commander, terrific
Oh,
vendor,
okay,
in
great.
October of 2024. In 2025, we took it bilingual. It's fully in Spanish now as well, as is
Mm,
our online
mm,
banking.
mhm,
And then we indexed it. And we just did, kind of great site hygiene. What
mm,
phrases, what terms, how are
mhm.
they embedded? Then in 2025, we launched search engine optimization, which you can do very, very inexpensively.
Yeah.
And then we expanded it into Spanish language SEO. And we started to discover we were like the only result that was popping up for a whole lot of terms.
Mm,
If you search for tax help credit union in New Jersey, we are your only result right now.
wow.
We're beating
Okay.
H&R Block for like, 6 cents a click or something like that. I mean,
Wow.
it starts to get kind of wild just putting in that foundational layer. And a marketing consultant, and there's many good ones in credit union land, can help just with that foundational playbook layer. Then
Mm,
I think you get to have some fun.
mhm.
Okay, so you can try things like we experimented with a Facebook groups pilot, and we used a vendor that had no experience in credit unions, but had terrific experience in getting businesses profiled in local community Facebook pages, which, groups where people feel very passionately about things.
Yeah, yeah.
So we've gotten that up and running. I've tested out some influencer strategies. We've brought the university press in, and they did
Mhm,
a video from our branch. We've done all kinds of just little innovative pop like things that are not super expensive to try, and where as much as anything they get your brand awareness out there, but they also sort of infuse your
mm,
employees feel the creativity and they like it.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So I'm a board member for a credit union here in Madison, and we do marketing. And one of the things that I think gets the most attention is when we feature our employees
Hmm.
in some of the social media posts that we do.
For
Like
sure.
those always get the most engagement because it's familiar faces.
Oh yeah.
And I do love this idea of getting your employees involved in creation as well.
Hmm.
So like
Hmm.
I love this influencer strategy. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that works?
Okay, so again, this is just a little tiny pilot, but it's something that I do hope we experiment with more broadly. But you can sit down and figure out pretty quickly who are 10 community influencers, people that have large followings for interesting, thoughtful reasons
Mm,
on platforms like uh, certainly TikTok. The one that we focus on is LinkedIn, Facebook as well, Insta as
hmm
well.
hmm
And there, you can either directly engage them and offer them to come in and build a relationship with them, or you can go with a third party. who is familiar with building these types of relationships. What we found here, just initially, is that we have a university population. They're 18 to 22, no surprises here, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But they like feeling like they're tapped into a credit union, they're building their credit, they're getting ready for that first apartment after they graduate. And
Hmm.
so if you make the pitch to them, it's a wildly inexpensive way to market to people that have the ear and the word of mouth potential in your
Sure.
area that would be very difficult to replicate any other way. So we just kind of experimented with that a little, but I'm confident we're going to do a lot more with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really brilliant. I mean, I love the idea of trying to identify those people who have really strong local followings
Mm-hmm.
and seeing if they can become ambassadors for you, and the work that you do. Is there, how do you incentivize that partnership? Like, how do you get that person bought in to what you're doing? Is there like financial support that you're giving
Mm-hmm.
this person? Like what's the way to compel them to get involved in the promotions that you're
It's a
doing?
great question. I haven't given financial remuneration for it. I could,
Hmm.
and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. It just
Hmm.
hasn't come up as a need because we've been able to just kind of give people an experience.
Hmm.
And they like the experience. And they're, when they're 18 to 20, they're walking into this environment, they're looking to learn about everything. To them,
Mm.
they get the feeling of discovery. It's almost like, wow, there's an added benefit to being here. I had no idea. They kind of vaguely knew us. We have ATM on campus. We've got
Hmm.
some brand presence there.
Hmm.
But to see it live and to feel like they have a bit of an inside line on it is an
Hmm.
exciting feeling for them. So, but
Mm.
I'm very open to other approaches to compensate, certainly within regulation. We've got a terrific compliance guy here who will keep me on the straight and narrow.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And
Hello, Scott.
meanwhile, we have a guest
Hi, good
appearance.
morning.
Yay! Hi. Good morning.
I love this. Scott, I was hoping that you were joining. So we are live and we're recording in the middle of the podcast, but that's totally fantastic. I was hoping you would be here. And so my next question, and you can almost take this one, but my next question was going to be how much you talk about this credit union as being a success story for one that has made this pivot from serving sort of a general membership, or a specific seg, and focusing on underserved, working class, lower income individuals. And so I'm curious to know from Dana, what your experience has been as part of that transition, and what some of the challenges have been, but also what some of the successes have been as your credit union has made that big pivot.
Sure. So I was given a gift upon arrival here, which is that there had been several years of strategic planning before me where the board and senior management were collectively bought in and on the same page about the importance of serving an underserved or unbanked population in this area. One story we've really never effectively told is that this is our origin story. So in 1972, come in the Wayback Machine with me, leisure suits, okay? uh, seven predominant people from the Princeton University and Princeton community realized that it was nearly impossible for people who were not conventional to access credit in the Princeton area, and it was paralyzing for them.
Mm.
And so the chartering set of seven in this credit union include two African American gentlemen, one of whom was very senior in plasma physics, the other of whom was a former Tuskegee Airman.
Mm.
Okay, there was also a woman who signed our charter in 1972, which was 2 years before the Equal Credit Opportunity Act made it possible for her to get her own credit card.
Mm.
And so,
Wow.
another woman who had influence in the community. And the way that I'm told anecdotally she told it is that she signed it and she waited for someone to have an objection, and no one ever did. Okay, but this credit union was founded by people for the people who needed it. And,
Mm.
in their immediate sphere of influence in the 70s, they were thinking about dining services, facilities, transportation, landscapers, the people who service personnel, nannies. And over time, that message resonated, and this credit union has reliably served those populations since 1972. The
Mm.
insight that I think Scott and our board and others came to before my time was that the same spirit and mission that made sense in the 70s still makes sense for us today in a region along this corridor between New York and Philadelphia that's one of the fastest growing Hispanic regions in the country and
Mm.
is also the home of many H-1B visas. So
Mm.
we see a very, very powerful immigration story in this region. And so it made sense with our history. That's actually an opportunity because that's not a story we tell enough, to be
Sure.
honest. Okay, but in walking in 2 years ago, very, very clear that if we could get brand awareness out to these groups that we're here and we're happy to help, and that these are not pearlized gates We're not walled off. This is not town versus gown. This is town and gown,
Mm,
and
mhm.
available for a lot of people. That story could resonate and would grow. And we've certainly seen that. I think last year we were at something like 53 community events. And we have a Spanish language speaking community business developer who is out there telling our story with the microphone. And we do see word of mouth, we see results from SEO, but we've been really kind of resoundingly adopted, I think, by the Hispanic language community, the Hispanic cultural community here in this area. So we
Mm.
engaged Coopera and said, hey, is this working? And they did an analysis, and it looks like our Hispanic membership is up about 24% in the last 18 months.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that is awesome. And I love this concept of town and gown too,
Yeah.
right? Do you feel like you have sort of these two brands that you have to sort of hold up in parallel, or do you feel like your brand and your business strategy in general sort of captures all of it at once? Like how do you balance, sort of serving, maybe let's say multiple sort of groups of
Mhm.
people that you're trying to resonate with?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, when I describe this, I call us a barbell. We have a very barbelled membership. So, what I mean
Mm,
is, on one end, we are overweight, civically minded people who love the idea of saving at an institution where the money is recirculating in the community to people in need. So, it's the rising tide lifting all boats. That's a familiar narrative in Princeton.
mm,
It's a 250-year-old narrative in Princeton.
mhm,
That when we thrive, the whole area thrives, and so we do have a membership that is certainly falls in that profile, and the persona is much like you'd imagine. These are our members who are asking me questions about AI, and our members who are very multi-generational, are the ones who brought their 6-year-olds in and they got the piggy banks and they initiated a relationship. So that's
mm,
one side of the barbell, and that's certainly a side we love to work with. Okay, and it's going to be another 50 years, we hope, of real resonance in that community. The
yeah.
other side is people that were historically underbanked or unbanked who are finding us for the first time. Typically, we do see a wave of new arrivals. We see certainly the university, also to the country. And for, we've got 20 plus years of history in serving them and helping people get their first American bank account, understand as a postdoc in the United States, what does it mean to have a credit card? How does American credit work?
Mhm, mhm,
But also, those same skills have afforded themselves well to helping people who are newly arrived in the country. And so we've seen growth there as well. So we're two ends of a barbell, not a whole lot in between, to be totally honest. But we are historically a very heavily banked area. Banking is certainly one of the key employers in New Jersey. And
mhm.
so when we talk about growth and expansion, I think there's so much room to grow on both of those fronts. It is two sets of complementary messages. The
Sure.
compelling reason to walk into Princeton Federal Credit Union when you're, say, an early stage entrepreneur, maybe bilingual, looking to leverage your own personal capital to try to grow a business off the ground.
Mhm,
The message for that member is very different than the message for the member who says, I read books on poverty and I'm inclined to support organizations that are trying to alleviate poverty in America.
mm,
And
mm,
so,
mm,
and we can speak both of these languages, but they are different.
mm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I do love that analogy, the barbell analogy, and I feel like this is something that credit unions should be leveraging in a greater way across the
Mm,
country, right? I mean that's the value proposition. If you're not able to compete on technology, if you're not able to compete on accessibility, where you
mhm,
can compete is on mission, right? And very few institutions can boast that if you deposit money into an account here at our credit union, it's going to go to your neighbor, or it's going to go to your family member or your
mhm,
coworker and help those
mhm,
people that really need help in your community. I mean, that is the credit union model, and it seems so obvious.
mhm.
But packaging up that message in the right way, and getting in front of the right people at the right times. I mean, that's kind of the trick, right? And I think if
That
credit
is the
unions,
trick.
yeah, if credit unions could figure out how to really deliver that message, that's what
Mhm.
really could lead to significant growth through leading with mission. And that's something that Scott has written about many times. Is mission is the great differentiator for credit unions. Scott, as you think about your journey with Princeton, anything that stands out to you as far as that evolution of their organization over the past several years and better serving the underserved folks in their
Yeah,
community?
absolutely. I share the Princeton Federal Credit Union story a lot, and the reason I have is one, as Dana said, I was amazed at the beginning of the process of how this wasn't a new that as I've learned their origin story And I don't know if you already talked about, I mean, bilingual staff and not just Spanish. Um, the number of financial counselors, the investment in community has been remarkable. And they have one of those examples that where the board saw the mission, the opportunity, and they circled around it and said, what can we do? What can we do? And it
Mm,
wasn't just the board said, okay, CEO, go out and make this happen. The board was like, how do we invest in this? How
mm,
do we make sure that we're successful in this? How, you know, looking to the CEO saying, what do you need?
mm,
How do we do this? How do we leverage their original sponsor, Princeton? And it was just one of those moments of strategic planning, Tom, when you see the board and management come together and say, we're going to do this. This
mm,
isn't well, this will be our strategy for the next year. This is like, how do we re-engage in this? How do we go to that next level? That is powerful. And I
mm,
share the Princeton story because if they can, I mean, if you look at the income, if you look at the income disparity in many of the parts of the country that we serve, people can follow Princeton's example and say,
mm,
how do we find this other half of the barbell? How do
mm,
we do this? And then make conscious efforts to pivot towards it.
mm,
This is something that's replicable, right?
Mhm.
And I want more credit unions to do this. And it's smart business too. So that, and then uh, passion, Glamis, the business development person that is out in a wide area of Trenton and the whole county. She literally is like I she
She's
she
remarkable
is
pizzazz, a lot
oh
of
my
charisma.
gosh, she
Yeah,
just exudes this energy and
yeah.
passion for what she's doing. Um, and then the other piece that I really like and I share with is Princeton's been working towards their CDFI, right? As you can imagine, in this income polarized area, they've had to focus on serving the other side of the barbell.
mm,
And they have been able to go out and reach community partners and foundations and get money to fund some really innovative ideas, right?
Hmm.
And you
mm,
have to be able to go in and tell your story and convincingly tell your story to a foundation that you can trust us. Let us put your money with our money and let's reinvest it. So what I see Princeton doing right now, I am screaming from the rooftops because as we look at how do we get credit unions growing, how do we get them back to their original point of rebuild that relevance? It's doing what Princeton's doing right now. It's going to be
mm,
fun. Mark my words, it's going to be fun the next 5 years to see what Princeton Federal Credit Union accomplishes.
mm, mm. Yeah, let's dive into that, Dana, on the
Hmm.
community partnerships and some of the funding that you've been able to tap into.
Hmm.
So, what are the specific examples of the partnerships that you've formed and how have you leveraged those relationships? Like
All
and
right.
maybe talk a little bit about that funding as well. That would be great.
Sure. So we very much in the same vein as we live along this corridor of immigration from New York to Philly. We're also along a very strong foundation corridor.
Hmm.
And I came from a world where we talked a lot about foundations, charitable endowments, family offices, which is something I haven't even started to scratch.
Mm,
And so, the opportunity to do work that's in line with many of these foundations' missions, certainly in New Jersey, is clear. So you pick a foundation, say, for example, that focuses on solving for the racial wealth gap in New Jersey, a longstanding respected organization. We put in an ROI and said, we'd love to meet you, we'd love to talk. And they came back just recently and said, wonderful, we would too.
mhm,
Predating that and predating my time here, there's a relationship with a very powerful foundation, very well respected foundation that is quite literally in our backyard, Tom. Like if I were more athletic, I could throw a rock from the seat and probably land it in their yard. Um, and they have a very strong willingness to be experimental, and they have a leadership team that is has a experience in community development at large banks. So they
mm,
kind of intrinsically see that you can activate the capital, and you can even just get the structuring to do things like small dollar lending from a credit union.
mm,
So these are stories that you can tell, and they require a little confidence. You got to get walking with a little swagger.
Hmm. Hmm.
But there is plenty of reason in 53 years of strength at this credit union to believe that certainly we can do exactly what it is that we've put forward to do. One of the opportunities is I think we might be a little better at talking to non-credit union affiliated foundations about grant and different opportunities than we are talking to credit union associations. There's a learning curve with that. So, for
Mm.
example, openly, we submitted this year for an inclusive grant, first one we've ever submitted for. We did not get it. I
Mm.
learned a couple of interesting things from the process. I love learning from and watching what the winners are doing, the people
Hmm.
that did. We'll give that another shot. Okay. And so it is sometimes I think about my early days at this credit union, and I remember being in a conversation with leaders about uh, have we maybe hit the ceiling on membership in some of our segments, in some of our areas?
Mm. Mm.
And
Mhm.
the thought was maybe that we had because the growth hadn't been particularly strong in the years prior to that.
Mhm.
And I was like, guys, I don't even think we could measure our penetration if we tried. I
Mm.
think the tree is overloaded with fruit. I think it's just a matter of us getting some baskets and going picking. I feel
Mm.
that same way about association and foundation charitable giving in the state of New Jersey and certainly beyond. I mean, there are so many conversations we've never had.
Mm. Mm. Mhm. Right. Yeah. And, I bet a big part of that comes down to resources and time,
Hmm.
right? Do you find that to be a constraint at the credit union? Your asset size, you're at 170 million.
Yep.
My guess is you have 50, no, maybe more than that. 50 employees? 70?
Oh,
50?
Scott. He's more generous to me than we are indeed here. We are at 32 strong at this credit union.
32. Okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
All right, I was putting
Small
myself
but
on the
mighty.
spot to come up with a number. Yeah, 32. That sounds reasonable.
Uh-huh.
And so can you talk a little bit about how that, might play a role in your ability to get out into the community, whether
Hmm.
it's meeting with members or meeting with community organizations? This is something that a lot of small credit unions deal with, is
Hmm.
sort of that people constraint. What are some
Yeah.
of the challenges there?
Yeah. So one of the really brilliant things that Sam Policelli did before I arrived is he decentralized business development. In Sam's philosophy, everyone was a business developer.
Mm.
And I still see, it's still a message I encourage and believe in, and I still see it very strongly threaded through many of the people at this credit union. The person here who's most passionate about financial literacy events is a member of our accounting department. The
Oh, wow.
person here who is most passionate about community engagement in the city of Trenton and specific neighborhood pockets is a member of our member services team.
Mm.
These aren't business development air quotes people. We're all kind of business developers here. There were
Mm.
definitely areas that we hadn't touched or aspired to get into before 2 years ago, for sure.
Mm. Mm.
Resource constraint is so real. I feel this every day. I walk around and I say hi to people and I go, I wish I could clone you all.
Mm.
Like there is so much that we could do, and there's just such a remarkable base of people here already with very little attrition.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but yeah, resource constraints for sure. And so there's some selectivity. So like one of the things we did last year is we had an honest reckoning with ourselves about, in terms of associations, who is tier one for us locally, where
Mm.
we've got an established relationship. We know the executive team there. We're involved with their events. They know how to describe us. We know how to describe them. We
Mhm.
have a tier one set. Tier two, the ones that we would love to grow. Tier three, where we've either historically had a relationship that lapsed or where we've just never quite had success with the inroads yet. And
Mhm.
then I've got my dream list, the 4 or 5 organizations that I would love for us to build a relationship with 10, 20 years, just the ones that my designated hitter list, the ones that I just die to have. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and that's how we focus our energy and attention. So when we
Mm.
look at what we're going to do in terms of our building the brand awareness, building these associational relationships, we're prioritizing 1/2, 2/3.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
it's a strategic conversation, and it's sometimes a challenge for people in a credit union environment where you've got a mission that's about giving, and everyone wants to give everything to everyone all the time.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
we are tapering our energy for sure.
And so you've seen some of these relationships with these third parties or these organizations locally. You've seen
Yes,
some of these relationships bear fruit as far as membership growth and
times
visibility.
10,000. Yes,
Would you say it's one of, if not the most effective
yes,
ways for you guys to get your name out there? And
without a doubt.
is there anything tactical that you're doing that leads to acquisition of membership?
Yeah, I'd love to give you an example from last weekend. So,
Okay. Yeah. Great.
all right. So there's also in the 1970s, very, very aspirational senior at Princeton. In order to get out the door and graduate with your diploma, you need to write a senior thesis. He wrote a senior thesis about what a community development organization in Trenton could look like and could do if it was severely holistic, if it was able to help people with food insecurity, simultaneous with job training, simultaneous with just every which need. And so his name was Marty Johnson. He graduated and he brought his vision to life, and he built a community organization in Trenton called ISLES.
Mm,
Over the years, I'd call ISLES kind of a tier 3 relationship for us, sometimes stronger, sometimes weaker. There was turnover. We eventually created a lending program with their backing for some of their people they were serving who were most in need, but it was very small. It didn't have a lot of motor.
hmm
And so in the last 2 years, we've invested a lot. We believe wholeheartedly in the mission of ISLES, and we see so much parallel between our history and theirs. And so we've really worked on building out that relationship, and they are spectacular. And so they have a program there called ISLES Youth Initiative, IYI. And
hmm
what this little program and this behemoth of an amazing charitable machine is doing is it's taking people who have essentially failed out of school, 16 to 24, struggled. Okay, typically, financially very insecure. These were not the kids where mom and dad came in with to get the piggy bank at 6.
hmm
These are kids who are at ISLES getting simultaneously their GED and job training, and they're getting a stipend.
hmm
They're being incentivized to stay in school.
hmm
And so we, in getting to know them just through the community events and conversations, we built out a program that we launched last week, led by an amazing member of our member services team, where we went in and we sat down and we did financial literacy coaching, opened accounts, taught them about certificates, taught them about personal loans.
hmm
We saw I believe, almost 20 new accounts in a day just from this little initiative. We also saw 4 members of the ISLE staff join us that day.
Wow. Oh,
Okay,
awesome.
and so it's just one little illustrative example of an organization we respect immensely.
hmm
Okay, and that initiatives like that, we lather, rinse, repeat. And the nice thing is once we worked through so many operational questions and challenges to make that happen. How do you open an account for a minor if the parents aren't on the scene at all?
hmm hmm
Just questions like that. Now that we've worked through it, we can playbook it into other environments. Affordable housing communities, for example, is the next one that we're thinking of. And so uh, the last point I want to make on that is organizations like the one I just described, ISLES, they are also talking to charitable endowments and foundations all the time.
hmm
We jointly make each other credible. When we do things together, it creates that matrix, that webbing that builds our joint credibility and lifts all the boats.
hmm Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the multiplier effect, right?
Very much.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I see sort of a pattern emerging in some of the things that you've done at the credit union around community involvement. It kind of feels like maybe one of the cornerstones of the success of the credit
For sure.
union is this community involvement piece with getting these relationships going with these organizations. I love the influencer. I'm still thinking about the influencer strategy.
Yeah, I think I
And
think it's replicable all across the country if people are
yeah,
into it.
absolutely. Oh,
Hmm.
that's really wonderful. I love learning new things. I swear, this is just the
Yeah,
coolest ever. Okay, so I have two more questions for you.
sure.
So the first is, what guidance would you give to other credit unions who are thinking about the other side of that barbell and who haven't made that commitment to serving, underserved folks, marginalized folks, but want to or feel like or know that it's the right thing to do, but just can't make that leap yet? Like, what advice would you give them to get started on that journey?
I think that's such a compelling question. And I don't totally know that I have the answer. I think we had an alchemy here, and
hmm
Scott described it earlier as a combination of a very open board, very kind of academic board in an area that's historically been very pro new American populations. We had an interesting alchemy here. I think really it gets back to theories of change management, and
hmm
something that we talked about all the time in banking. We don't talk about that much in credit unions. How do you lay the groundwork for change in a credit union environment where a lot of your colleagues feel strongly about stability? And it's the stability and the security of we've done things this way that has in part kept them here. Because, to be honest, I look around at some of the people that I have the privilege of working with at this credit union, and they could probably make a lot more money elsewhere. And I am
hmm
grateful every day that they're here, but I think about what keeps them here. And it's the family feeling of being here, it's the stability, the security. So introducing change and attitudinal change, philosophical change, is hard. And
Mhm.
I think, if you get the right friends and allies to help, I think, a multi-year journey, certainly with YCUP and with others, that helps. But it's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of dialogue. And it's a lot of,
Mhm.
we're so good at repeating on the brand side. It takes 7, 8 times of someone hearing something for them to feel like it's not, that's for them and it's relevant. I think the same is true on change. And so I wish that I had a magic ticket on this one. I
Mhm.
probably could learn a lot from Scott if I ever went on tour, in terms of how those seeds germinate. I just know I've been on the receiving side of the fruit of the harvest.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you're touching on something that is really important. And I think oftentimes these conversations, and I see this in strategic planning sessions, and I'm sure Scott has seen this about a
Hmm.
thousand times, where a board and a leadership team will have a conversation about what they think that they should do around serving underserved, but
Hmm.
something's holding them back. Whether it's an operational thing, they don't feel like they have the right people or expertise or processes or products in place to serve those groups, or it's a risk thing where
Yeah.
they don't want to take on the credit risk of, making a loan to someone with a below, 600 credit score or what have you.
Hmm.
But there's just these things that come up that hold groups back, hold credit unions back. But what you're saying is, and I think this is really important, is that just continue to have those conversations. Keep exploring, keep trying
Hmm.
to understand and be curious about what it means to serve these groups. And the more that you have those conversations, hopefully it leads to a comfort level and a greater understanding and realization that this is something that the credit union should be doing because it's the right thing to do, but also because, as Scott says all the time, because it can be impactful for your business. It can grow your organization, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
And
that's
I think there's probably an argument for looking at your credit union and saying, who are your internal influencers?
mm, hmm
And I think most listening to this could probably come up with 4 or 5 names.
mm,
And
hmm
one of the things that there are two things that I want to thank you for, Tom, because I learned about them from your podcast.
mm,
The first is the existence of DE. I'm not a DE. I'm totally jealous. I'm trying to
mm.
get there at some point. Okay. The second was crasher programs in
Mm,
credit unions. I can assure you there is no such luck on the banking side. Okay, but the just about every preeminent organization hosting an annual conference is offering some crasher track.
hmm hmm
To the best of my knowledge, we had never had any of our internal influencers apply to crash some of these conferences where they would be hearing about and exposed to ideas from elsewhere in the country, different innovative programs and things. So this is our first year of applying out some of our internal talent to go crash. The idea being that they come back with infused with new ideas, presenting at management meetings and staff meetings, talking about the normalization of some of the innovation they see somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's probably something to be said for that. I haven't proven that out yet. Like I said,
Mhm.
we're just kind of submitting our first round of apps, hoping we get lucky. But I think
Yeah.
that there's probably a lot of reasons to believe that that's effective.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I will tell you from my personal journey, I when I started at CUNA, the trade association formerly known as CUNA, now known as America's Credit Unions,
Mhm.
like I remember sitting down and taking like a course on CPD online that sort of told you about the history of credit unions, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And
Yeah.
then they made it a concerted effort to get their employees to go through DE as well. And so I went through it, and then I was like locked in afterwards because it just unlocks, the magic of credit unions and how it
Yes.
can address all these sort of really entrenched social issues that we face, and that credit unions have the ability to address all of them and impact all of them and affect all of them. So I do think that from like an employee retention standpoint,
Hmm.
if you have a really strong person that you want to keep at the credit union and you want to ensure that they stay in credit unions in general, put them through DE and they'll be a lifer without a doubt. So I think you're on the right track there. Shout out to Chris Morris, the guy who runs DE now. He's a longtime friend of mine.
That's great.
And he is like the exact right person for that job, because he is one of the greatest credit union ambassadors and supporters that I've ever met, without a doubt. So, okay, last question here.
Hmm.
This conversation has been fantastic. It went
I'm
by
so glad.
so fast, like they
I
always seem to do,
could
but
not
this
agree
was
more.
this was
Yeah.
really great.
Hmm.
So this is around growth and technology.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about credit unions' approach to technology as technology continues to advance in financial services and across, really all sectors. I'd be curious to know how you think about technology and the things that you feel like you need to do in order to keep pace with some of the options that your members have in other financial services providers. Do you feel this pressure and this weight to try to continue to accelerate what you're doing from a technology standpoint?
I
Um,
love
or
this
or do you
question.
like
Yeah.
your own provider and doing things your own way? Like, what's your philosophy there?
Yeah. All right. So this is maybe the thing that I was wrongest on when I
Mm,
thought about taking this role.
mhm,
When I thought about joining the credit union, I was sure that I was going to be in an environment where we were technologically hopelessly behind.
mm,
I could not believe when I got here how solid we are. Okay, we're on a really fabulous core.
mm.
We're on an online banking provider that is, I believe, kind of front of curve innovating. Uh, we
Great.
we've made great vendor selections along the way. Credit to many people at this credit union who were thinking about the ecosystem of our technology and just a total obsession with the member experience. Is it easy to do business with us? I've got my grandmother here. She's 96. This is my grandmother. She
Mm,
was in
mhm.
the Jeopardy Tournament of Champions back in the 60s. I I look at her, she emails, and I say, is what we're doing right now as the credit union making sense to this woman
Mm, mhm,
technologically?
mhm,
And if it is, then I'm convinced that we're going to have some success. And so I can't, again, I can't believe how solid the core is in the base. And the ability to spin up new solutions later this year, we'll go on to a small dollar lending solution that's really essentially plug and play into our core.
mhm,
I'm shocked by some of this. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. I was an engineer undergrad. I've
mhm,
always been fascinated to how things fit together and how pieces align. And so I'm not coming at this from a place of like seeming insecurity. Like I look at the experience that someone might have with Chase, and I look at the digital experience that they'll have here with Princeton Federal Credit Union. And our experience for the day to day of banking, for medium term savings, stuff like that is very, very on par.
mm,
It's
mm,
on par enough that we can obsess over the little stuff. Have you ever noticed that with Chase, if you just hold up your phone, the biometrics detect you, you don't have to tap anything?
mhm,
Well, in
mhm,
our solution, you have to tap once. Should it be that way? And we're throwing in tickets. Like, can we do these things? We the tech is so solid that I think we are actually able to privilege ourselves to exploring cool things that we can build in and enter in.
mm,
The
mm,
thing I haven't seen anyone really solve for yet, and I would love to learn from anyone listening to this about where they've had success. I see some gamification of financial literacy.
mm,
I see
mhm,
people interested in can I take some of these solutions that make it fun and engaging, where I'm building points or I'm achieving levels or I'm doing something to build financial literacy? Can we build that into our apps? Can we build that into our experience? Can we build it into our events?
mhm, mhm,
I think that that makes a lot of sense. I just we've been climbing the same tree with like trying to get people excited about webinars since pre-COVID. I don't think that there's a lot of excitement necessarily for that stuff. There
mhm,
is excitement for gamification and for making it fun and making it relevant. The who wants to be a thousandaire philosophy. The
mm, mm,
average American can't surface $400 for an emergency, but we can help you become a thousandaire.
mm,
And then
mhm,
you have the comfort of knowing that. And if I can remind you of that every time you're logging in, don't you feel good? Don't you
mm,
want to come
mhm.
back and do more? I'm looking for people that have solved this well. And I think it's still pretty nascent, but I think we're going to be able to compete with any bank on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I'm
yeah,
so happy to be wrong about this, Tom.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that credit unions have kind of always gotten a bad rap about their technology offerings.
Yeah.
When some of the new technologies started coming out, I feel like the conventional wisdom was that credit unions were behind. But if you actually
Hmm.
looked at the data, they were adopting at the same rate that banks were. And
Hmm.
a lot of these technologies, and I know like the big banks, they obviously have more resources to be able to
Hmm.
invest in all the bells and whistles. But I think that I always go back to Linda Bodie, who's the president and CEO of Element Federal Credit Union, and something that she told me a long, long time ago, which is that it doesn't matter how small you are, you can still do anything if you put your mind to it, from a
Hmm.
technology standpoint or from a product and services standpoint. And I've always just been like, yeah, like just if you see an innovation, if you see a piece of technology, or if you see some way to serve members that's unique and that's going to draw them in, go after it and do it. There are going to be
Hmm.
providers, there's going to be workarounds. that can be helpful to you in doing it. So I love that philosophy. And with that, I do want to say thank you so much for taking the time to
Yeah,
record this episode. It's been really fantastic. I guess
I'm glad.
I'll leave Scott. Scott has such a rich and long history with you guys. I'm
Yeah.
gonna put Scott on the spotlight here, or in the spotlight, and have him close us out and say maybe a closing word about Princeton and say thank you to Dana for joining us. Scott, how does that sound?
Um, wow. Well, thank you, Tom. Give me, I mean, I need at least 15 minutes. Look, you, for those credit union leaders that are watching and listening to this podcast, you've seen the body language. You see Dana's body language. She's excited. She's looking. She's looking for resources. She's engaging resources. And if credit union leaders that log into this will take one thing away, as a small credit unions, we face the regulatory challenges, all of us. And sometimes those can be daunting. We face the technology changes, which can be trying to keep up can be daunting. The human resource challenges. And Dana's credit union has the same things,
Mhm.
right? But what you've listened to today is a CEO that is focused on the future. She built a team. She has a team that is making these things work, figure out solutions, and she's leading the organization, building these partnerships and removing obstacles for her staff and working through the challenges. And I get frustrated. I hear so frequently, well, small credits can't compete. We just, there's too many hurdles. And that there are a lot of hurdles, but you get leaders like Dana, and Tom, you and I get to work with a lot of them, so we know who they are. You get leaders like Dana and a team that's committed to it and a board that supports it. We are relevant and we can grow and we can thrive. And Dana talked about the opportunity that's
Mhm.
out there as vision. And that's the big takeaway here for the leaders, the credit union leaders that listen into this. We can do it, and it goes back to, what do you prioritize? What's the most important to you? What are you passionate about? And that's what I love about Dana's leadership and the credit union's leadership. And I'll restate, it's going to be fun to watch the success of Princeton Federal Credit Union, and we will be sharing it with as many credit unions as we know. We want people to replicate what you're doing. So and Tom, thank you so much for bringing leaders in that can inspire and also inspire and educate
Hmm.
um, the many credit leaders that are out there.
Well, Scott, we're going to keep giving it the college try over here. Pun very much intended.
But it is Princeton, so that goes a long way.
Tiger,
It
tiger,
goes big
tiger.
in the college tribe.
Very,
So
very
passionate.
privileged to be part of it.
That's right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Scott, for those great words. And thank you, Dana, for joining us. This has been another great episode of Credit Union Nation. Thanks again for joining, and we will see you next time.